Good evening. Welcome to South Asia Newsline. I'm Uzma Jafri. Here are the top stories we are tracking for you on Thursday, the 3rd of June. Decades of mistrust and situation can't change overnight, says Indian Army Chief on ties with Pakistan. Opposition parties in Pakistan slam PM Imran Khan for rising inflation, vow not to let budget pass. And Sri Lanka readies for oil spill from sunken cargo ship. And now for all the details. India's Army Chief Manoj Mukund Naravane is on a two-day visit to northern Jammu and Kashmir to review the prevailing security situation in the Union Territory and along the de facto line of control with Pakistan, where a ceasefire has completed 100 days. On Thursday, the Army Chief said that the decades of mistrust between the two neighbours cannot change overnight, and the onus is on Pakistan to create an environment free of terror and hostility.
Indian Army Chief General Manoj Mukund Naravane arrived on a two-day visit to northern Jammu and Kashmir on Wednesday to review the prevailing security situation in the Union Territory as the ceasefire understanding between India and Pakistan along the LOC line of control completed 100 days. Speaking to reporters on day 2 of his visit on Thursday, General Naravane said that the decades of mistrust between India and Pakistan cannot change overnight, and the onus is on Pakistan to create an environment free of terror and hostility.
There have been decades of mistrust between Pakistan and India, and obviously the situation on that score cannot change overnight. However, if the ceasefire continues, if they continue to observe the ceasefire in letter and spirit, if they stop and desist from trying to push terrorists across and foment trouble in India, then all these small steps will definitely go incrementally to build up that level of trust between the two countries. So as I said, the onus is entirely on Pakistan.
India and Pakistan had on February 25 this year released a joint statement announcing a ceasefire along the line of control following talks between their Directors General of Military Operations. Kashmir has long been a flashpoint between the neighbours, but tension was renewed after New Delhi last year scrapped provisions of Article 370 that gave special status to the region and split it into Union territories. India accuses Pakistan of supporting militancy in the area. Pakistan denies the charge, saying their support is only moral and not financial or logistical.
In news from Pakistan, Pakistan's two major opposition parties, PML-N and the PPP, on Wednesday lashed out at the government's economic policies and once again vowed to make every effort to block the passage of the upcoming federal budget from the parliament. This came after the country's Statistics Bureau said that inflation rate stood at 10.9% in May.
Pakistan's main opposition parties on Wednesday lashed out at Prime Minister Imran Khan-led government for rising inflation in the country and reiterated that they will not let the ruling Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf party pass the anti-people budget in the parliament. Pakistan's inflation remained in double digits for the second successive month and stood at 10.9% in May. Prices of essential commodities including chicken, eggs, meat, vegetables, pulses, sugar and rice have been on the rise, hitting hard a population already under pressure from the COVID-19 pandemic. PML-N, Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz Party leader Miftah Ismail in a press conference said Prime Minister Imran Khan had put the middle class and poor people of the country into huge trouble due to price hike, inflation and unemployment.
ये 2.5-3 साल में इमरान खान ने वापस वही 7.5 करोड़ लोग की गुर्बत ले आया है. वही जो 2 करोड़ लोग वही नहीं होंगे, लेकिन जो 2 करोड़ लोग हमने निकाले थे गुर्बत से, इमरान खान ने 2 करोड़ लोगों को गुर्बत में डाल दिया है.
Meanwhile, Pakistan People's Party chairman Bilawal Bhutto Zardari in a statement said his party will take all steps required to thwart the conspiracy aimed at damaging the common man in the upcoming budget. The budget session of the parliament will be held from June 5 till June 30.
Moving on. Locals in remote areas of Pakistan-administered Kashmir have blamed government's negligence for deteriorating condition of roads and crumbling infrastructure in the illegally occupied territory. They said with no development, the region has also become out of bounds for tourists.
Locals in remote areas of Pakistan-administered Kashmir have blamed negligence by Pakistan to construct roads and develop the crumbling infrastructure, which continues to afflict their lives in the illegally occupied region. They lamented that soon there would be elections in Pakistan-administered Kashmir and politicians will make hollow promises to bring about development, but all in vain. They blamed the situation due to rampant ignorance and corruption has not only adversely affected the tourism sector, but travelling itself is a difficult task for even them, they said.
अफराधी काम तामीर और तरक्की के जोड़े काम ये मुनासिब होने चाहिए इसलिए असं जनाब ये पैदल इसू सौदा चाह का गवर्नमेंट से पार कर खड़े हैं ता और रोड रास्ता आज तक नहीं होया ये नोटिफिकेशन हो गया जी ये हो गया वक्त खड़े ये हो गया जी ये हो गया इस वक्त तक रोड नहीं होया पक्का.
Locals have long blamed that over 7 decades of Pakistan's illegal occupation has pushed Pakistan-administered Kashmir into the most neglected, backward and poorest area in the South Asia region.
In news from Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka on Thursday readied for the possibility of an oil spill after a cargo ship laden with chemicals sank off its western coast and tons of plastic pellets have fouled the country's rich fishing waters in one of its worst ever marine disasters. The Singapore-registered MV Express Pearl was anchored off the Colombo port when a fire erupted on board after an explosion on May 20.
The MV Express Pearl cargo ship carrying tons of chemicals sank off Sri Lanka's west coast, the country's government and navy said on Wednesday, in one of Sri Lanka's worst ever marine disasters. The government on Wednesday suspended fishing along an 80-kilometer stretch of the island's coastline, affecting 5,600 fishing boats, and hundreds of soldiers have been deployed to clean affected beaches.
සම්පූර්ණයෙන් ක්ලියර් එක තෙල් ටික තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. තෙල් ටික තියෙනවා නම් අපි ඒකට ආරක්ෂාකාරී ප්‍රියවරවල් මේ වෙනකොට අරගෙන තියෙනවා.
The president of Sri Lankan Fisheries Society said on Wednesday he was worried that a ship sinking would be a death blow to the industry. The Singapore-registered MV Express Pearl, carrying 1,486 containers, was anchored off Sri Lanka's west coast when a fire erupted on board after an explosion on May 20. Flaming containers laden with chemicals tumbled into the sea from the ship's deck as emergency crews sought to contain the blaze over the ensuing 2 weeks. The MV Express Pearl had left the port of Hazira in India on May 15 and was on its way to Singapore via Colombo.
Moving on to news from Nepal. As the Himalayan nation continues to battle the second wave of COVID-19 infection, France on Wednesday handed over 7 tons of medical aid to the Nepal government. The small Himalayan nation, with a population of less than 30 million, recorded 571,111 cases of COVID-19 as of Thursday.
France sent 7 tons of medical assistance to Nepal, struggling with a second wave of coronavirus on Wednesday. French ambassador to Nepal, Francois-Xavier Leger, handed over health equipment and supplies to Minister of Health and Population, Hitesh Tripathi, at the Tribhuvan International Airport. The shipment via special flight brought in 504,000 FFP2 masks, 20,225 antigenic test kits, 12,000 protection glasses and 14 respirators, including consumables.
France, along with other friends of Nepal, especially EU member states, want to express their solidarity with Nepal. And it expresses the global effort of the friends of Nepal in the midst of this pandemic.
Battered by the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, Nepali government has been appealing to developed countries for medical assistance to fight the pandemic.
यी सामग्रीहरू हामी महामारी विरुद्धको लडाईमा प्रयोग गर्न र यसको वितरणलाई सुनिश्चित गर्न मन्त्रालय प्रतिबद्ध छ.
As of Thursday, Nepal recorded 571,111 cases of COVID-19. Of these, 101,993 are active cases. This comes a day after the Himalayan Nation on Tuesday received a consignment of 800,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccines from China. Meanwhile, the US government, through the US Agency for International Development (USAID), has airlifted emergency medical supplies to Maldives, Pakistan and Sri Lanka to help save lives, stop the spread of COVID-19 and continue to meet the urgent health needs across South Asia. This new airlift follows 3 shipments of COVID-19 relief supplies by the US government to Nepal and the delivery of 7 emergency air shipments to India to help contain the COVID-19 pandemic.
Nepal's climbing season to the Mount Everest was accompanied by a devastating surge in coronavirus cases and unfavorable weather conditions, forcing some to cancel expedition. As the season ends, Mount Everest recorded 4 deaths. On Wednesday, the body of a Swiss climber who died at over 8,000 meters in the death zone of the world's highest peak was brought back to Kathmandu after it was retrieved by a group of skilled Sherpa climbers.
A group of 10 trained Sherpa climbers retrieved the body of Swiss climber Abdul Veraj, who died in the death zone due to exhaustion at an altitude about 8,650 meters on the Mount Everest. The body was first brought to Camp 2 on Wednesday morning and later in the day to capital Kathmandu. As the season ends, Mount Everest recorded 4 deaths, 2 foreigners and 2 Sherpas. Earlier, the body of American climber Prevailing was pulled off from Camp 4 and was airlifted to Kathmandu this week. Nepal issued a record 408 permits for Everest peak season this year, which runs from April to May before bad weather sets in. Most climbers are assisted by Nepali guide. The climbing season was accompanied by a devastating surge in coronavirus cases in Nepal, with record number of daily infections and deaths. Earlier, Nepal had extended the spring mountaineering season to climb Everest to June 3, as scores of climbers were still waiting for fair weather to make their bid to reach the Everest.
More than 100 Jews belonging to Bnei Menashe, one of the lost tribes of Israel from India's northeastern Manipur state, had to delay their plans to settle in Israel as members of the community were found COVID positive. They are now in quarantine at a Sikh place of worship, which houses a COVID center in Indian capital, New Delhi.
More than 100 Jews from India's northeastern Manipur state have had to delay plans to immigrate to Israel as members of their family fell ill and have been placed in quarantine at a COVID care facility in Indian capital, New Delhi. 40-year-old Soizagan, who is recuperating at Gurdwara Rakabganj, a Sikh place of worship, and will soon renounce his Indian citizenship, calls his permanent move to Israel a golden opportunity and said they were very excited about the move, which definitely got delayed because of COVID. Soizagan is part of India's roughly 6,000-strong Bnei Menashe community, which lives largely in Manipur and neighboring Mizoram state, and has been formally recognized by Israel's rabbinical leaders as Jews.
40 people, they belong to Manipur, and they were supposed to go Israel. Before going to international airport, it was just a examination regarding the COVID. So they got approx 10 people got positive. So SDM has given response to call here, and we called all people. They are approximate 40 people from Manipur. They were supposed to go Israel. Now they are into center. We are carrying all of the people.
The Bnei Menashe, or children of Menashe, claim to have been exiled from ancient Israel by the Assyrian Empire around 730 BC, while search for conclusive proof of their Jewish origins still continues.
Well, that's all we have for you from South Asia this evening. Now our viewers can watch the show on SouthAsiaNewsline.com. You can also visit us on Facebook.com/SAsiaNewsline and follow us on Twitter @SAsiaNewsline. That's all in tonight's edition. We will see you same time tomorrow. Good night.